can't say, oh, can we see if this works? It doesn't work that way. People believe what the police say. One of the police said during the trial in which I was acquitted, they said that I reached for a gun that was on the nightstand. And Bill Buffalino, who was my trial attorney at the time, he said, are you an expert in firearms? The cop, I'll never forget, I don't want to say his name to give him any recognition. He's dead now, but he said, oh, yeah, I carry a gun every day for 20 years. I consider myself a firearms expert. And he said, so the gun Mr. Wershey reached for, it was operable? Oh, absolutely. The gun didn't even have a trigger in it. So people are so blindsided, you know, when we were taught that if a police says something, that it's the truth. And I want to say, I wouldn't do what an officer does today. I truly support them. I believe that they're a protector and a school teacher's an educator. My personal belief is that neither one of them should pay taxes. You know, I'm watching the FBI searching a councilman's home right now.
Right. On our TVs, yeah.
It's amazing. People thought corruption was gone.
Yeah, I understand.
But that leads us into 3 years after they start using you as an informant, they decided 17. All of a sudden, they're gonna arrest you for possession of cocaine, and the allegations are out there that it looks like maybe perhaps you might have been set up because some people say some family members and associates of our former Detroit mayor may have been getting arrested, and maybe because of your work. Do you think you were set up at that point with the...
I could tell you this. And the cocaine that I was put in prison for, my fingerprints weren't on it. I didn't put under a porch. I was made to say that I did if I wanted to be released from prison.
By the FBI or by local police?
You have to admit to your crime if you want to be paroled, which... Another thing that no one knows is 2 days ago I was terminated from parole, so I'm a totally free man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's you know, you have to admit certain things, and
even stuff that you didn't do.
Absolutely, and that's the way our system works.
Because you got to tell them things that they want to hear.
If you don't tell them what they want to hear, you won't be released from prison.
Wow.
And that was
how many parole hearings did you have?
Actual in-person hearings, I had 2, but I had interviews one-on-one probably 3 times that, listen, they were all a sham until the last one. And the last one, the parole board chairman, who's still today, Mr. Egan, Mike Egan, he's an ex-prosecutor, and he's the only person that I could tell you that was honest and did everything that he said he would do. And he told me he did not like what was done.
What do you think it was that led to, was it the pressure from the media? Was it pressure from, friends in Hollywood? Like, what was it that finally pressured the right thing to happen?
I think it was the truth. You know, the truth started coming out. And, before anyone saw the documentary, Dan Gilbert saw the documentary before anyone in the world saw it.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of took offense to it, and he picked up the phone and kind of got the ball rolling. But once it was rolling downhill, and people no longer wanted to admit what they did.
I want to get to a few stories from you because I've heard these secondhand, but we got Rick Wershey with us right now, who is known as White Boy Rick. I want to know about being in prison. So you were in prison at what age did you go in?
18.
And got out at?
51.
51. So tell us kind of, first off, what does an 18-year-old do when he goes into to prison? I mean, I would be in a corner cowering and crying. But you can't do that, right? If you show them that you're fearful, they pretty much own you, don't they?
Yeah, you don't. That's one thing you don't want to do in prison is show any fear. Like you have to put on. I don't know. It's not easy to talk about, but you kind of lose. You get numb to a lot of things. You know what I mean? And I've said it before. Like being in there, you watch everything evolve, Mojo.
Yeah.
Around you, but you play no part in it. It's almost like being dead, but being able to see everything evolve. Like when I got out, this phone, when I went to prison, I had a cell phone. You dialed the number and you push send.
Right, remember?
Yeah.
When I got out, I was in a halfway house and I got an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I grabbed this young kid. I said, come here. He goes, what? I said, you're giving me a crash course. I need to know.
Isn't that crazy?
I need a half hour. And he's like, I got you, bro. And you know, I figured it out pretty quick. I'm not an expert, but I can hold my own with it. So it's, you know, prison it's a dark place, man. It's a dark, lonely, you know, even when I would hang up the phone with my family or my kids or whatever, you're back to being all alone.
Yeah.
So it's not easy.
Do you have to watch your back all the time, or do you have people that watch your back?
You have to watch, and you have to have people that watch. So
Okay.
it's, you know, I've seen, I got to help Justin Timberlake with the movie that's out right now called Palmer. It's on Apple, and Scott Silver got me that gig. And he plays an ex-convict. And my first day, I was at a decent correctional facility called Scott's in Plymouth on 5 Mile and Beck Road. And for some reason, because of this moniker that was put on me, I was sent to a prison called Michigan Reformatory. And at the time, it was called Gladiator School. And it was 25 and under, and it was everybody serving life or basketball figure numbers. You know what I mean? Like extremely 40 years to 80 years.
Yeah.
You know, 50 years to 100 years. And it was a very wild prison. And the one thing that I'll never forget from prison is I got there, and it was my first night yard. And the phones were lined up back to back. And I went and I called my mom, and I told her, you know, they moved me, and this is where I am. And I saw a shank being passed. And they started stabbing the guy in the neck
Oh my God.
on the end of the phone. And I'm an 18-year-old kid. I'm from the street, but I had never saw anything like that up close, like literally blood splurting out of this guy's neck. And I said, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. And I hung up the phone, and I walked in, and the guard who controlled coming and going from the yard, he goes, get ready, Wershie, because it's every day. And it was.
Really?
It was the most violent place that I had ever been to in prison.
Wow. And then where was that prison at? That was in
Ionia, Michigan Reformatory.
Jesus. So you're in prison with this as your warning. You're 18 years old. You got to constantly. I mean, how do you get a good night's sleep?
I didn't have a good night's sleep for 32 years, 7 months.
Jesus.
You don't sleep
Every night.
If you should go on the internet sometime and pull up the sounds of like prison, just listen to them. You'll never I'll never forget those sounds.
Wow. Now you did do it. It's amazing. You're a very intelligent guy, and I've heard from numerous people that know you personally that you did a ton of reading and learning while you were there, didn't you?
Absolutely.
What were you reading?
I read pretty much. I've probably read well over 2,000 books. So, but the one book
I've done 2.
Yeah, he's not joking.
I'm not joking.
I'll tell you this, and this is, and
Everybody poops.
and this is why I love Scott Silver, is because when I was down in Florida, Florida's probably the worst prison system where I've ever been. I hear Alabama's worse than Florida, but Florida is like third world country-ish. And people can say, oh, you're in prison or whatever, but right before I got out, 4 male officers beat a woman inmate and broke her neck because she wouldn't clean a toilet. And they're very serious down there. It's the South. They're very controlling, very military-ish in prison. And I was going through a rough time. And it was hard for my fiance to come and see me. It was so far away. So it was hard. I had a gate pass where everybody thought I was in prison, but I was made to go work in society every day. And Scott Silver gave me a book, and it was called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's by Viktor Frankl. And it's the only book I brought home from prison, and it's in my nightstand.
Wow.
So that book he survived the concentration camps. And Scott said, I only want you to read half of the book. You don't need to read this whole book. And I said, no, I'm going to read the whole book. And everybody you might read a book, Mojo, and take something totally different than I took.
Your interpretations can be completely different.
I took from that book, and Scott laughed at me when I told him. And I took from the book that if I think what I went through was anything compared to what Viktor Frankl went through, excuse my language, I would consider myself a bitch. Like, that's what I got out of it. So I read what this man lived through and the hell that he went through. And what kept him living is, at the end, he thought he would see his wife, but his wife was dead the whole time. And he was literally starved and abused. And the only reason they kept him alive was because he was a doctor and he could be of some use to the Nazis. So that book kind of at the end kind of put my life into perspective.
When Scott told you only read half of it, what was it, why he didn't want you to get to the he didn't I don't know, he didn't really want me to see the suffering, I guess. Yeah.
Like, he knew what I was going through.
He wanted you to get the message that was in the
without
beginning.
the suffering.
Yeah.
And I needed the suffering.
Yeah.
I needed to see that other people, like, no matter where I was, and I did 16 months straight in solitary confinement before. So wherever you're at, there's always someone worse off than you.
That's an amazing lesson to learn, because here's a guy who's wrongfully imprisoned for, his whole life, or almost your whole life, because you got a long life to live. And for you to see that is, that's like biblical. That's unbelievable. But can I ask you a question about solitary? Everything that you talked about with the I still got that visual of that guy getting the shank. Is solitary better than being out? Because I would be thinking I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time.
Solitary is meant to break you. They literally want to break you mentally. Like, the one thing that I take a lot of pride in, I never took a drug in prison. And what they want is, for lack of a better term, we call it the Thorazine shuffle. And it's actually where you can't take a full step. They drug you to the point where, and these people, when they call pill line, there's a line that forms, or they'll run the pill line. And one of the guards, his wife was a psychologist there, and he had looked at my file, and he goes, don't take this wrong, but you've never talked to anyone, or you've never taken a drug. And I just prided myself on never letting anybody break me. But solitary was tough. There's a lady that you'll see in my documentary that took care of me when I was in solitary, and it was the closest I came to breaking.
Wow. When you get out, how do you find your way back to society? Because your whole adult life has been behind bars. You don't even know how to interact with adults because you never had to since 18. You're 51. All of a sudden, you got to move to where? When you first get out, where do you live?
The one thing that gave me a jump start on everything was I was fortunate to be able to go to a halfway house for 10 months, which, again, in Michigan, we don't offer that. But whoever's in charge, if they would look into it and see what a blessing it is for people, especially that have been gone for a long time, it kind of acclimates you back into society.
How cruel is that to pull you out of that and put you right out on the streets and say, go do it?
It happens. I met a guy downtown in front of the Nike outlet the other day, and I was with a buddy of mine. He's actually filming a movie. Jeff knows him, Mike Young. And the kid walked up to me, and he had his bag in his hand, and he said, "Hey, Rick, I just got out of prison 3 days ago. I'm homeless. I have nothing." And I gave him $100 bill, and I said, "Hey, here's a little money. Get a room. Get something down here." And he said, "I have a job. I'm starting tomorrow." And when I gave him the money, he said, "That's the Rick I've always heard about."
Because in this state, if you don't have family waiting for you on the other side, they put all your belongings from jail or prison in a bag, and they give you a bus ticket.
In a trash bag. That's what they put your stuff in.
Did you have anybody waiting for you in terms of family, friends?
Fiance, right?
I had a fiance. I had a tour bus waiting for me.
Yeah.